Every now and then, I come across a question that completely changes the way I see the world. This was one of them. It started with something so ordinary that I had never questioned it before. A banknote. I looked at it and suddenly realized I had absolutely no idea why it had value. Not how much it was worth, why it was worth anything at all. Think about it. This piece of paper can't feed you, it can't heal you, it can't build a house. If you were stranded alone on a deserted island, it would be almost useless. And yet, people dedicate 40 years of their lives trying to collect more of it. Wars have been fought for it. Families have been destroyed because of it. Entire civilizations have risen and collapsed because of it. So I started asking questions. Simple questions. Questions I probably should have asked years ago. Why does money exist? Why do we trust it? And perhaps the strangest question of all, what would happen if tomorrow everyone simply stopped believing in it? Imagine, an intelligent alien visits Earth. You hand it this 50-euro note. You tell it, this buys food. This buys a car. This can even buy a house. The alien studies the paper. It turns it over, examines every detail, holds it against the light, then asks a question so simple that suddenly you don't know how to answer. Why? Why does this piece of paper have value? Not because someone printed numbers on it, not because it contains rare materials, not because it can do anything useful by itself. So, why? The answer is far stranger than I ever imagined. Because this isn't really a story about money. It's a story about imagination. Humans are remarkable creatures. We build cities. We fly to space. We split atoms. But perhaps our greatest ability is something far less obvious. We can believe in things that don't physically exist. Countries, borders, laws, companies, universities. None of them exist anywhere in nature. You can't discover a border growing in a forest. You can't dig a corporation out of the ground. They exist because millions of people believe they exist. Money belongs to that same category. It isn't part of nature, it's part of a shared imagination. And surprisingly, that doesn't make it weaker. It makes it incredibly powerful. But it wasn't always like this. For almost all of human history, money didn't exist. Imagine waking up 10,000 years ago. No wallet, no salary, no bank account, no prices. Only people, families, small villages. If you wanted bread, you needed someone who baked bread. If you wanted clothes, you needed someone who made clothes. Everything depended on exchange. At first, that sounds simple. Until you imagine trying to buy a cow using apples, or paying your taxes with chickens. Economists have a name for this problem, the double coincidence of wants, a complicated name for a very simple frustration. Both people must want exactly what the other has, at exactly the same moment. The larger society became, the more impossible this became. Trade slowed down, communities struggled, civilizations needed something better, not because people wanted to become rich, because civilization itself was beginning to outgrow barter. Money wasn't invented to create wealth. It was invented to remove friction. People became incredibly creative. Some cultures used salt, others used shells, tea bricks, animal skins, feathers, rice, livestock, even enormous stone wheels, too heavy to move. If enough people trusted something, it became money. And that's the first thing that surprised me. Money has never been about the object itself. It has always been about agreement. The object is almost irrelevant. The agreement is everything. Then something extraordinary happened. Across different continents, without telephones, without airplanes, without the internet, civilizations that had never met each other slowly arrived at almost exactly the same answer. Gold. Ancient Egypt, the Roman Empire, India, China, the civilizations of South America. Again and again, gold became the most treasured form of wealth. At first, I assumed it was because gold is beautiful. But beauty isn't enough. Diamonds are beautiful too. So why didn't humanity build its financial system around diamonds? The answer surprised me. Gold possesses an almost impossible combination of qualities. It doesn't rust. It doesn't decay. It survives fire. It survives floods. It can be melted without losing its value. It's rare enough to remain valuable, yet common enough to be useful. It is easy to recognize, extremely difficult to counterfeit, and unlike food, it never spoils. Nature had accidentally created one of the most reliable ways to store trust. Gold wasn't valuable because humans loved it. Humans loved it because it solved a problem better than almost anything else. And for thousands of years, that system worked. Empires rose, trade expanded across continents, ships crossed oceans carrying gold, kings measured power in gold, nations built vaults to protect it. It seemed impossible that anything could ever replace it, until someone had an idea. An idea that would quietly change the world forever. Imagine carrying enough gold to buy an entire building. You'd need guards, wagons, maybe even soldiers. It was heavy, dangerous, slow. So banks offered something different. Leave your gold safely inside our vault. We'll give you a receipt, a simple piece of paper promising that your gold is waiting whenever you want it back. At first, people didn't trust those receipts. Why would they? It's only paper. But slowly, something unexpected happened. People stopped exchanging the gold and started exchanging the paper. Because carrying paper was easier, safer, faster. Without realizing it, humanity had taken the first step towards a completely different kind of money. And that's where the story becomes even stranger. Because what happened next changed everything. Those pieces of paper were never meant to become money. They were receipts, nothing more. A promise that somewhere inside a secure vault, real gold was waiting. Every banknote represented something tangible, something you could touch, something you could weigh, something real. And that worked for centuries. People trusted the paper because they trusted the gold behind it. The paper wasn't valuable, the promise was. But then, something happened that almost nobody talks about. Banks noticed something interesting. Almost nobody ever came back to collect their gold. People preferred using the paper. It was easier, faster, safer, which created an irresistible temptation. If everyone trusted the paper, did every note really need to be backed by gold? Little by little, more receipts were printed than there was gold inside the vaults. Not all at once, not as part of some grand conspiracy, simply because it worked. As long as people kept believing, the illusion never broke. The moment everyone demanded their gold back, the system collapsed. That became known as a bank run. History has seen hundreds of them. People lining up outside banks, desperately trying to withdraw something that simply wasn't there anymore. Not because all the money had disappeared, but because trust had. And that's when I realized something. Money has never been protected by vaults. It has always been protected by confidence. Then came the 20th century. 2 world wars, economic crises, governments borrowing unimaginable amounts of money. The old system became increasingly difficult to maintain. For decades, countries had promised that every dollar, every pound, every franc could still be exchanged for gold. But behind the scenes, there simply wasn't enough gold. The promises had become bigger than reality itself. Then, on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon made an announcement. It lasted only a few minutes, yet it changed the global financial system forever. The United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. At first, it sounded temporary, a technical decision, a political adjustment, but it never returned. For the first time in modern history, the world's most important currency was no longer directly linked to gold. And here's the part that fascinated me most. The world didn't collapse. People still went to work. Supermarkets still opened. Factories still produced goods. Children still went to school. The next morning, almost nothing looked different. Why? Because I had been asking the wrong question all along. Money never worked because of gold. Money worked because we trusted each other. Gold was simply a bridge. Trust was always the destination. Once I understood that, I couldn't stop seeing it everywhere. Look around you. Almost everything that makes modern civilization possible depends on trust. When you board an airplane, you trust engineers you've never met. When you swallow medicine, you trust scientists you've never spoken to. When you cross a bridge, you trust calculations you'll never understand. Modern civilization isn't built on concrete. It's built on invisible trust between strangers. Money is simply one expression of that trust. Then I discovered something even more surprising. I always believed banks worked like giant safes. People deposit money, banks lend that same money to someone else. Simple, logical. Wrong. Modern banking is far more fascinating. When a commercial bank approves a loan, it doesn't usually take a pile of cash from a vault. Instead, it creates a matching bank deposit in the borrower's account. New money enters circulation through lending within a regulated banking system governed by capital rules, liquidity requirements, and central bank oversight. The first time I learned that, I checked multiple sources because it sounded impossible. But that's how modern banking works, which means something extraordinary. Most of the money in our economy exists because someone, somewhere, decided to invest in the future. Every mortgage, every business loan, every investment is ultimately a vote of confidence that tomorrow will be more valuable than today. Without optimism, credit disappears. Without credit, growth slows. Without trust, the entire system begins to freeze. Then inflation finally started making sense. People often think inflation is simply prices going up, but that's only the symptom. The deeper story is about balance. When more money chases the same amount of goods, prices tend to rise. When supply chains break, prices can rise. When energy becomes scarce, prices can rise. When expectations change, prices can rise. Inflation doesn't have one single cause. It's the result of millions of individual decisions happening simultaneously. And once again, everything comes back to trust. Do people trust that prices will stabilize? Do businesses trust tomorrow enough to invest? Do consumers trust the future enough to spend? Economics is far more human than mathematical.
And then came Bitcoin. At first, I thought Bitcoin was trying to replace money. But the more I researched, the more I realized that wasn't really the point. Bitcoin wasn't created because paper money existed. It was created because some people questioned who should be trusted. Should trust belong to governments, to central banks, to commercial banks? Or could mathematics replace institutions? Whether Bitcoin succeeds or disappears, it is attempting to solve exactly the same problem humans have faced for thousands of years. How do strangers trust each other without knowing each other? The technology changed. The question never did. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. I had spent weeks researching money, gold, banks, inflation, Bitcoin. But in the end, none of those things were the real story. The real story was us. When I started this journey, I thought I was investigating money. I wasn't. I was investigating human nature. Because once you remove the coins, the paper, the numbers, and even the gold, only one thing remains: trust. Think about your entire day. You wake up and check your bank balance. You don't question whether those numbers are real.
You simply accept them. You buy breakfast. You trust your card will work. The shopkeeper trusts your payment. The bank trusts the network. The network trusts the bank. Thousands of invisible agreements happen in less than 2 seconds. Not because anyone knows everyone else, but because everyone believes the system will continue working tomorrow. That's extraordinary. No other species on Earth can do this. A wolf trusts its pack. An elephant trusts its herd. But humans trust complete strangers, millions of them, every single day. And that ability changed everything. Imagine trying to build a skyscraper without trust. The architect doesn't trust the engineer doesn't trust the steel supplier doesn't trust the transport company. The construction workers don't trust they'll be paid. The buyers don't trust the building is safe. Nothing gets built. Now imagine an entire country without trust. No loans, no investments, no salaries, no pensions, no hospitals, no supermarkets, no internet shopping. Modern civilization isn't powered by electricity. It's powered by confidence. Electricity keeps the lights on. Trust keeps society alive. History has shown us what happens when that confidence disappears. Germany, 1923. After the First World War, prices started rising, faster and faster. People were paid twice a day because their wages lost value by lunchtime. Families rushed to spend money before it became worth even less. Children played with stacks of banknotes because they were cheaper than toys. People burned money because it cost less than firewood. The paper hadn't changed. The ink hadn't changed. Only one thing disappeared: belief. And once belief vanished, money became exactly what it had always been: paper. It happened again. Zimbabwe, Venezuela. Different countries, different governments, different reasons, exactly the same outcome. The lesson wasn't political, it was psychological. Money survives only as long as people believe that someone else will also believe tomorrow. The moment that chain breaks, the system begins to unravel. Which made me wonder, if trust is the real currency, what is wealth? Is it really the amount of money in your account? Or is it something deeper? Imagine two people. One owns €1,000,000, but nobody trusts them. The other owns almost nothing, yet everyone trusts them. Who is truly richer? Because opportunities, businesses, friendships, partnerships, investments all begin with trust. Long before money changes hands, confidence does. Maybe we've been measuring wealth the wrong way all along. Then I started looking at companies: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Ferrari, Louis Vuitton. What makes these companies valuable? Is it their buildings, their machines, their products? Partly, but if tomorrow the entire world stopped trusting those brands, their value would collapse almost overnight. A luxury watch isn't expensive because of the steel. It's expensive because millions of people agree it represents something more. A banknote, a Rolex, a Bitcoin, a share in a company, a work of art. They all follow the same invisible rule. Value isn't inside the object. Value exists inside our collective imagination. That idea changed the way I looked at history. The pyramids, the Great Wall of China, the International Space Station, the Internet. None of them were built because humans are individually stronger than other animals. A gorilla is stronger. An elephant is stronger. A whale is larger. What makes humans unique is that millions of us can cooperate without knowing one another. We cooperate through stories. Money is one of those stories. Perhaps the most successful story ever created, because every morning, more than 8 billion people wake up and continue believing it, without signing a contract, without speaking to each other, without even thinking about it. That might be the greatest miracle of modern civilization. And then I realized something that completely changed my perspective. Maybe money was never invented to create wealth. Maybe money was invented to allow strangers to dream together. A farmer can sell food to someone he'll never meet again. An engineer can build a bridge for people she'll never know. A scientist can invent medicine for children on the other side of the planet. Money allows human effort to travel through time and across continents. It's not perfect, far from it, but no invention in history has connected more strangers than money. And that's why this was never a documentary about economics. It was always a documentary about humanity. Maybe that's why every civilization eventually created money. Not because people were greedy, not because they wanted power, but because every civilization reached the same conclusion. Trust alone wasn't enough. Trust needed a language. Money became that language. A farmer in Spain could suddenly trade with a merchant in Egypt. An inventor in America could receive investment from someone in Japan. A doctor could dedicate years to saving lives without ever worrying how to barter for food. Money didn't make civilization possible. It accelerated it. It multiplied it. It connected billions of complete strangers into one enormous network of cooperation. And for thousands of years, that network kept growing. But every powerful invention comes with a price. The same system that creates prosperity can also create inequality. The same money that builds hospitals can finance wars. The same financial system that rewards innovation can also encourage speculation. Money itself has no morality. It doesn't care who holds it. Money doesn't decide. Humans do. Money simply amplifies what already exists. Give money to a generous person, and generosity grows. Give money to a corrupt person, and corruption grows. Money is often blamed for problems it never created, because money is nothing more than a tool. And like every tool, its impact depends entirely on the hands that use it. While researching this documentary, I realized something else. Almost every major argument in history has eventually become an argument about money. Politics, healthcare, education, technology, climate, housing, work, retirement. Every debate eventually returns to one simple question: who controls value? Because value determines choices, choices determine behavior, and behavior shapes civilization itself. Money may not be real, but its consequences certainly are. Then I asked myself one final question. What if money disappeared tomorrow? Not because of war, not because of technology, not because computers failed, but because everyone simply stopped believing. Would houses disappear? No. Would food disappear? No. Would knowledge disappear? No. Would human talent disappear? No. Everything that truly matters would still exist. The farms, the factories, the engineers, the doctors, the teachers, the ideas. The only thing that would vanish would be the invisible agreement connecting them all. That thought stayed with me because it means something extraordinary. Civilization isn't built on money. Civilization is built on cooperation. Money is simply the operating system. Think about the people you trust most. Your parents, your best friend, your partner. Would you lend them money? Probably. Not because of the money, because of the trust. Now imagine extending that trust to someone you've never met. A stranger who baked your bread, designed your phone, built your car, generated your electricity, protected your savings. Every single day, your life depends on thousands of strangers keeping their promises. And somehow, most of the time, they do. That might be the greatest achievement in human history. When we look back at civilization, we usually admire the monuments, the pyramids, the Colosseum, the Great Wall, the Eiffel Tower, the Burj Khalifa. But perhaps those aren't humanity's greatest creations. Perhaps our greatest creation is something completely invisible. A shared belief, strong enough to connect billions of people who will never meet. Strong enough to move food across oceans. Strong enough to build cities. Strong enough to send spacecraft beyond our solar system. All because we believe. When I first picked up that 50-euro note, I thought I was holding money. Now, I see something completely different. I see thousands of years of human history. I see merchants crossing deserts, sailors crossing oceans, farmers harvesting crops, scientists making discoveries, entrepreneurs taking risks, families building a future. I see one extraordinary idea passed from generation to generation, the belief that complete strangers can work together without ever knowing one another. That belief changed the world. Not gold, not paper, not numbers. Trust. So, the next time you pay for a coffee, check your bank account, or hold a simple banknote in your hand, remember this. You are not looking at wealth. You are looking at one of the greatest stories humanity has ever agreed to believe. A story that built the modern world. A story that only continues because tomorrow morning, billions of people will wake up and choose to believe it again. When I started this journey, I wanted to understand money. Instead, I discovered something far more valuable. The invisible force that has always held civilization together was never money. It was trust. And maybe that's the richest thing humanity has ever created.